Good morning. April 27th, 2020. We're back again for our people. COVID-19 is not going to stop us. We can't meet at Hakims Bookstore, 210 South 52nd Street, beautiful West Philadelphia. But the show goes on. So for our people, we're doing the pandemic business building. And as a matter of fact, today's topic is Hakims Bookstore's Survive and Thrive Drive. Right? Let me say that again. Hakims Bookstore's Survive and Thrive Drive. So we know that small businesses we're not able to take advantage of some of the things, those large the government grants and programs that the large businesses were able to take care of, and a lot of small businesses are hurting. We talked last week about Marcus Books in Oakland, which is the oldest black bookstore in the country. So this week we're going to talk specifically about Hakims Bookstore. We want you to go to Hakims Bookstore on GoFundMe. Just go to GoFundMe.com and put in Hakims Bookstore, and you'll find the Hakims Bookstore's GoFundMe page, so that we can not just survive through this pandemic, so we can thrive. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit later, about some of the programs that we're planning to have once this pandemic is over, because I think this stuff is changing the game a little bit. Right, and so if it's changing the game, we need to adapt with it. So with Hakims Bookstore's Survive and Thrive Drive, the money that you donate towards Hakims Bookstore, I'm going to tell you exactly what we're going to do with it in the next year or two, and not just survive, but thrive. We need black bookstores all around the country to survive, not just survive, but thrive. And all the things that I talk about, the programs that we're going to talk about implementing, to keep Hakims a pillar, an institution of the community. Every black bookstore, bite it. If you like any of the ideas, take it. Right? Ideas are not copyright protected. They're not trademark protected. I'm putting it out there in the universe because only black bookstores can make this stuff really, really, really happen deep in my heart. And only those that are committed to black bookstores can really make this happen. And I believe that deep in my heart. So I'm going to talk about these ideas freely. If you think they're dope, and you have a black bookstore in Memphis, Chicago, Tallahassee, Dallas, Los Angeles, wherever you are, we're going to save these black bookstores, these institutions. We need them. Right? They do things for our community that nobody else will do. They bring authors and scholarship to our community that nobody else will. So again, Hakims Bookstore. First of all, again, for the books I talk about today, we are going to talk about books. Right? That's the whole purpose for our people, bringing books, scholarship, intelligentsia from the halls of academia and the publishers' houses, and bring them to you, get you excited about black books. You can find us on HakimsBookstore.com, where you can purchase these books. Right? You don't, if you don't, can't go to the store right now, but we can go to HakimsBookstore.com. You can call the business at 215-474-9495. You order that book, we will ship it right out to you. We're on Facebook, Hakims Bookstore on Facebook, Hakims Bookstore on Instagram, and you'll be able to check this video out also on my personal YouTube page, and that's AfrolanticanJurisprudence on YouTube, AfrolanticanJurisprudence. Maybe I need to get a simpler title, or maybe I need to get a caption going below. We're going to do things to really spruce up the bookstore, the video, everything. We're not coming back from this pandemic to just survive. We're coming back to thrive. All right, again, I am Andre Smith, Smitty Bonton, Andre Smith. I am your scholar in residence, former law professor for 15 years, American Association of Law School Institutions, Florida International University, Penn State University, Widener University, which is now the Delaware Law School, and my alma mater, Howard University School of Law. Again, it's my goal that we talk that black stuff here by bringing books that are of interest to African American scholars and present them to you, as well as books that we also have in the store. But again, we're not in the store right now, so we'll get you wet with, you get your appetite wet with, again, the books, the weekly book selection from the Journal of Blacks in Higher Education. So let me shout out to jbhe.com for keeping it faithful, keeping it smart, keeping it black intelligent. So We're going to talk about the books. We're going to talk about Hakim's Bookstore Survive and Thrive Drive. But first, let me give shout outs. Let me give a shout out to all the healthcare workers, right? For those that don't know, again, I am also taking care of my grandmother and my mother, right? My grandmother turns 104 this year, right? She's 103, right? And so we have caregivers that 24/7 in this house and whatnot. And so shout out to them. Shout out to all the people that haven't missed a day of work during this pandemic, that are grinding it out. Shout out to all the essential workers. My aides have to go on SEPTA. They have to take public transportation, right? And so everybody pitching in to help keep themselves safe also keeps them safe, which keeps my dear mother and my grandmother safe. All of us as a community got to work together on this. So I appreciate you. Everybody out there that's making it happen, still out there working and providing the services to keep the rest of us going. Shout out to Michael Cord, the brother attorney, Michael X. You hear him all the time on WURD Radio. Shout out to WURD Radio and all the DJs and MCs kicking that black talk radio to the people, so we can talk about things other than booty shaking and dancing and singing, which I love. Love our arts and entertainment, but there's a balance. All we're talking about is balance, right? Again, the theme that the Egyptian god that I love most, the goddess of justice, truth, order, and balance. That's Maat, M-A-A-T. Just about balance. So shout out to Brother Michael X. Shout out to WURD Radio. Brother Michael X is put together a dream team of lawyers to represent Michael White, who was found not guilty of murder when it came to a confrontation he had with a Rittenhouse socialite, and similar to the O.J. Simpson situation 30 years ago, they are now suing him personally in civil court. Michael Cord has responded and has agreed to represent the young man pro bono. He actually asked me to be a part of that team. Of course, I said yes, and will do any research and writing that they ask of me. So shout out to all of the lawyers that joined his team pro bono to represent the brother Michael White. And let me say that I hope to speak to each one of you that are on this team later about some economic justice issues. Michael Cord is one of the dopest in the city, in the country, when it comes to dealing with these criminal justice issues, and hopefully we can extend that to also some of these economic justice issues. And so I hope to tap into some of the talent and the social capital that we're creating with these lawyer groups, because I need this and other groups of lawyers to help economic justice, to help black folks, especially during a time like this, convert our hobbies into hustles. It ain't that hard. All we need to do is bring our minds together, a little talent, a little know-how, and an agreement, a little contract between us, so that both of us can make a few dollars, and it can happen, right? And it can happen. We can do a whole show and some seminars on it, but I don't want to do that until we actually have the lawyers and the accountants on the ready to make it happen for the people that want to do it. For every person that has a regular job, but you also have an interest, and I don't care if that interest is cooking, traveling, going to the movies, going out to dinner, you can convert that hobby into a hustle, and at the very least, save money on your taxes, right? It will pay for itself, and then hopefully do even more than that, actually become an income producing entity, hopefully being more than that, it actually gives you some financial freedom, hopefully more than that, gives you something to pass down to your children, so instead of engaging with this rat race, that they can help build up another institution, just like we're trying to hold up Hakims Bookstore as an institution since 1959, the child of Dawood Hakim, right? 1959. Now owned by his other children, Princess Yvonne and Princess Glenda, and they've taken it and have lived and have carried on that legacy for over 20 years. And so it's 2020. We're going to carry it on for another 60 years, right? In the year 2100, we're going to talk about how this institution has been a bedrock of West Philadelphia still. So I mentioned before that other black bookstores are out there trying to make it happen during this pandemic. Marcus Books, it's Oakland, also started the same year, 1959, 1960. So Marcus Books and Hakims Bookstore are the two oldest black bookstores in the country still functioning. Started by doctors, this is Marcus Books, started by Doctors Ray and Julian Richardson in 1960, the Oakland, California bookstore, which was in fact named after Marcus Garvey, leader of the Pan-Africanist movement, UNIA, is a staple in the black literary community where the visitors include stars such as Malcolm X, Oprah Winfrey, Bobby Seale, co-founder of the Black Panther Party, and Toni Morrison, among many others. And I hope all those folks, especially those with a couple dollars, pitch in to save Marcus Books. It has also hosted events for both debuted and established authors like Dr. Angela Davis and Terry McMillan. And as a celebration of the bookstore's 60th anniversary, Folasade Adesanya, creator of the Black Syllabus, I checked out the blacksyllabus.com online, it's very interesting, created a $50,000 GoFundMe campaign to save Marcus Books from closing amid the pandemic. Several of others across the nation have doing the same, with goals ranging anywhere from $2,000 to $100,000. And so at Hakims Bookstore, we're going to follow suit. We're going to, on Hakims Bookstore's GoFundMe page, just go to GoFundMe.com and go to Hakims Bookstore. It'll pop right up. We're also on a $50,000 campaign to not just survive, but also to thrive. And we'll talk about what thrive means a little later. All right? Again, we're going to try to keep this tight, keep it about the books, but we'll run back to that issue later. Especially, we know what the stimulus, that there's all of a sudden a new stimulus plan out there. Right now, the stimulus plan is based on, as far as I know, how many employees you have. So those solo practitioners, those solo business, those sole proprietorships are still even squeezed out of those programs, such as Miss Yvonne's Hakim's Bookstore. I am a scholar in residence. I'm not an employee, so I do my thing pro bono for Hakim's Bookstore. So know that any money you donate to Hakim's Bookstore, I'm not touching a penny of it. I do this for the love. I do this for the books. I do this for black knowledge. I do this for our people. All right, so anything you donate to Hakim's Bookstores goes straight to Miss Yvonne Blake, the owner of Hakim's Bookstore, 210 South 52nd Street, beautiful West Philadelphia, between Walnut and Chancellor. And even if we were trying to participate in the, what they call it, the Paycheck Protection Program, and they put another $400 million. Well, we know that the money already went to the Fortune 500 companies, some of whom are putting the cookie back in the cookie jar. Thanks for putting it back after you put your hands all on it. And what are they doing with it? The banks have been subsidized. They're getting basically no interest loans from the Federal Reserve. And are the banks passing those savings on to us? Nope, they're tightening the credit restrictions. They're tightening their lending. They're loaning that stuff to people with money and other corporations, so that they can do what? Keep their prices high, right? That's the reason why they're not giving you money, and they are giving businesses and corporations money, is not so the businesses and corporations can don't have to lower their prices. Right, which consumers would love, right? That would be a transfer of wealth from those corporations to the people just through price reductions, right? And so they're doing everything they can do to keep gas prices high, to keep food prices high, to keep other prices high by subsidizing these businesses and not the people. So we're going to have, if we're going to subsidize, the people are going to come out of this all right, we're going to have to subsidize each other. We're going to have to deploy whatever social capital that we have, that knowledge and that know-how and that wherewithal within our communities. Now, I don't say to give up on the stimulus package. I call out to our Democratic leadership, our Republican councilmen, if there are any, the mayor, to establish programs, and that can be on WURD. It should be podcasts. Every politician, elected official in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, United States of America should have a weekly podcast explaining the new laws that are about, the things that they're doing, and particularly here, how we as ordinary people can get the subsidies out of these bailout programs that other people are. It's one thing that they're not thinking of us, but when they do create these programs, we can not allow for others to get a draw from the trough and not us. So I call on all our public officials, all our elected leadership to have podcasts, to have videos, YouTube, doesn't matter, StreamYard. We got DJ battles on Instagram. There is no excuse now for people, our elected officials, to not have direct contact with the people to let us know how we can take advantage of the programs that are available to us. Best believe I'll be talking to, try to talk to ours in West Philly to talk about how they can help us with Hakim's Survive and Thrive Drive. The Survive and Thrive Drive. All right? All right, let's talk about some books. Let's talk about books. For our people, the main purpose of this is to talk about books, black books, books of interest to black folks, to hype up black scholars, black authors, and whatnot. And so this other black institution, the Journal of Blacks in Higher Education, puts out a weekly list of academic books that may be of interest to African American scholars. And I'm just going to say black scholars. So I know I don't really appreciate the distinction. I know there is one. Last week, we presented quite a few, and I'm going to include some of the books we had from previous weeks. We should go all the way back to Ruha Benjamin's Race After Technology. Who was it? Andrea Dennis, Rap on Trial. A lot of great books that have come out, so I'm going to try to remember to keep them alive from week to week to week so that you can call the bookstore and order them. But for last week, we had a bunch of great books. First of all, Racism, Slavery, and Maternal Power in Novels of Toni Morrison by Geneva Cobb Moore. I think that was 2 weeks ago. As was A Black Feminist Approach for Everyone, again, 2 weeks ago, but I think it's just a great title and great approach by Minna Salami. Last week's books was Afro-Pessimism by Frank Wilderson III. Again, this is a challenging book to me because I think of myself as an Afrocentric, which is optimistic, right? Which is optimistic about our past and our future. So I have, I'm interested by Afro-Pessimism, even though I'm turned off just a little bit. But as a scholar, I need to know what they're talking about. Beyond the Usual Beating, the John Birch Police Torture Scandal and Social Movements for Police Accountability in Chicago by Andrew S. Baer. Making School Integration Work, Lessons from Morris by Paul Trachtenberg. Bodies That Work, African American Women's Corporeal Activism in Progressive America by Tammy Miyatsu. And this is a Japanese scholar for a book that presents about American Japanese universities. More Than Ready, Be Strong and Be You, and Other Lessons for Women of Color on the Rise by Cecilia Munoz. Queen of the Negro Leagues, Effa Manley and the Newark Eagles by James Overmeyer. Selling Anti-Slavery, Abolition in Mass Media into Antebellum America by Teresa Gadu. And that's out of University of Pennsylvania Press. I'm very proud to say that University of Pennsylvania Press here in West Philly cranks out quite a bit of scholarship that is of use to African American scholars. Shout out to the, I still haven't finished this book, but it's a doozy, Michael Gomez's African Dominions. For my Afrocentric scholars and thinkers out there, that is a fantastic book about the history of West Africa, the pre-colonial history of West Africa, and Michael Gomez's African Dominions. Woo, check it out. Penn University professor. Steeped in the blood of racism, black power, law and order, and the 1970 shootings at Jackson State College by Nancy K. Bristow. Interesting to me. I was born in 1970. The Myth and Propaganda of Black Buying Power by Jared A. Ball. I've actually worked with Professor Ball. I link his work there with Professor Broderick's, and I think that may qualify as Afro-pessimism, the myth and propaganda of black buying power. Now, I understand the point that black buying power, the trillions of dollars circulating in the black community, is not by itself the answer to all our problems. However, I ask all folks, is it a simple question? Is it better for black folks to have more human, social, political, and financial capital, or less? Right? Which is better? Should black people have, in America and around the world, should we have more human, social, political, and economic capital, or less? Sounds easy answer to me. Right? So whether anything is a silver bullet, whether anything leads to equality within the next 10 years, 100 years, 500 years, making things better should be the aim, always. Right? I mean, I don't even know when that should stop. Right? What is the metric for when we should stop aiming to make things better? To increasing our human, social, political, and financial capital. So you know my mantra at the end of these talks is better educate ourselves, start and patronize black businesses, stop unduly criticizing each other. Somebody's got to explain to me how we can go wrong if those three things become our major activities. Better educating ourselves and our children. I don't see how there's a downside to that. Starting and patronizing black businesses and institutions. It's hard for me to understand a bad thing with that. Yes, I understand that there are sinful businesses, but at the same time, I'm not trying to create a sinless people. Right? I'm trying to create a people that has greater amounts of self-determination. And then let's stop unduly criticizing each other. Right? If we do those three things, we will vastly increase our human, social, political, and financial capital. And it's hard for somebody to tell me that is going to lead to something bad. Right? All right, so let's talk about the books that are out there this week, not produced, but at least identified by the Journal of Blacks in Higher Education. Some fantastic books this week. Let's start with the first one, Administration. Oh, this one's fire. This one's the fire book of the day. Administrations of Lunacy, Racism and the Haunting of American Psychiatry at the Milledgeville Asylum by Mab Segrest. Let me say this again. Administrations of Lunacy, Racism and the Haunting of American Psychiatry at the Milledgeville Asylum by Mab Segrest. We don't have to make up conspiracy theories about how black people have been treated. We don't have to make them up, right? We all know about the Tuskegee experiment. Many others of us know about how the father of gynecology and the gynecological discipline emerged from experimenting and whatnot on black women, right? So we don't have to make up conspiracies about how we have been subordinated and subjected to mistreatment. And so here's another investigative book about and to show an example of how what we've experienced in the 19th century, the early 20th century, sets up what America is today, right? So let me read a little blurb here from Administrations of Lunacy, Racism and the Haunting of American Psychiatry in the Milledgeville Asylum by Mab Segrest. A scathing and original look at the racist origins of psychiatry through the story of the largest mental institution in the world. Today, 90% of psychiatry beds are located in jails and prisons across the United States, institutions that confine disproportionate numbers of African Americans. After more than a decade of research, the celebrated scholar and activist Mab Segrest locates the deep historical roots of the startling fact, turning her sights on a long-forgotten cauldron of racial ideology, the state mental asylum system in which psychiatry was born and whose influences extend into our troubled present. In December 1841, The Georgia State Lunatic, Idiot, and Epileptic Asylum was founded. 100 years later, it had become the largest insane asylum in the world with over 10,000 patients. Administrations of Lunacy tells the story of this iconic and infamous Southern institution, a history that was all but erased from popular memory and within the psychiatric profession. Sounds like a movie's going to come out of this, or at least a Netflix series or something. Through riveting accounts of historical characters, Segrest reveals how modern psychiatric practice was forged in the traumas of slavery, the Civil War, Reconstruction, and Jim Crow. Deftly connecting this history to the modern era, Segrest then shows how a single asylum helped set the stage for the eugenics theories of the 20th century and persistent racist ideologies of our own times. That should be our word for this month. Eugenics. E-U-G-E-N-I-C-S. Eugenics. When we talk about the president sending folks out there and the strongest survive, the strong will survive, and culling the herd, and phrases such as that. When you want to understand neo-Nazism and other things like that, you have to understand the term eugenics. E-U-G-E-N-I-C-S, and ask yourself, who are the present-day eugenicists? A landmark of scholarship, Administrations of Lunacy restores a vital thread between past and present, revealing the tangled racial roots of psychiatry in America. Awesome, awesome. Right, I'm gonna need a copy of that. That's a very interesting book. It seems like so for those that are interested in health, I'm an economics scholar, but those that are interested more in health and wealth, in our welfare and mental well-being, this has got to be for you. All right, other books that have come out this past week: Afro-Realisms and the Romances of Race, Rethinking Blackness in the African American Novel by Daniels-Rauterkus. In this provocative and challenging book, Daniels-Rauterkus contests the long-standing idea that African Americans did not write literary realism, along with the inverse misconception that white writers did not make important contributions to African American literature. Okay, so she's trying to cross-blend a lot of stuff. Taking up key works by Charles W. Chestnut, Francis E.W. Harper, Pauline Hopkins, William Dean Howells, and Mark Twain, Daniels-Rauterkus argues that authors blended realism with romance, often merging mimetic and melodramatic conventions to advocate on behalf of African Americans, challenge popular theories of racial identity, disrupt the expectations of the literary marketplace, and widen the possibilities of black representation in fiction. Interesting. Another book, Campus Uprisings, How Student Activists and Collegiate Leaders Resist Racism and Create Hope by Tyrone M.O. Douglas. Okay, interesting book here about student activism. And another interesting thing about it is I'm very familiar with some of the editors. So this is a collection of works written by a lot of different authors, and the main editors are Tyrone Douglas and also Kemet G. Shockley. Kemet G. Shockley has a book that's very prominent in Hakims Bookstore, The Miseducation of Black Children, which basically takes the baton from Carter G. Woodson. He is a professor, I believe, in the Department of Education at Howard University. So shout out to Kemet G. Shockley, Ivory Tolson, James A. Banks, Gerlando Jackson, and Sean Harper for a very interesting work. The Chronicle of Higher Education reports that white supremacist groups are targeting college campuses like never before, while the appearance of nooses, swastikas, and racial epithets are increasing across the United States. And I am a graduate at the University of Maryland, College Park. And so I remember, so just recently, there was the brother that was the Air Force captain or the Army captain, Richard, I don't remember his last name, that was killed by a white supremacist, and they're refusing to press hate crime charges on the assailant. We also know of a soldier in Chicago, I believe it was, that was pushed off of the subway platform, or the L train platform in Chicago to his death by a white supremacist. So we need to watch out for this. This one movie that we just don't see in popular representation. We don't see it on cable television. We don't see it presented on Netflix. So again, black bookstores, we have to preserve the memory. We have to have movie nights and all that to show Higher Learning by John Singleton. Higher Learning by John Singleton. If I'm wrong and it's on Netflix, my bad. If I'm wrong and it's regular on rotation on cable television, my bad. To the extent it's not, to the extent of these movies that actually accurately point out how things really are and are so prescient from 25, 30 years ago, right? We have to keep those things in our cultural memory. John Singleton's Higher Learning. Another book that came out this week, Jamaica in the Age of Revolution. So all my yardis them in West Philadelphia. This book by Trevor Burnard, published by the University of Pennsylvania Press. Did I tell you West Philly I represent? So Jamaica in the Age of Revolution by Trevor Burnard. Examining such events as Tacky's Rebellion of 1760, the largest slave revolt in the Caribbean before the Haitian Revolution, which doesn't get the props it deserves. The Somerset Decision of 1772, which is, again, about slavery in England and the English colonies and territories, and the murder case of the Zong in 1783 in an Atlantic context. Bernard reveals Jamaica to be a brutally effective and exploitative society that was highly adaptable to new economic and political circumstances, even when placed under great stress as during the American Revolution. So those that want to know, again, about revolutionary Jamaican history, right? We talk about pre-colonial African history, pre-colonial African American history, but the history of the Caribbean, the history of South America, history of Central America, Latin America, even Canada, and of course Asia and whatnot. The stories of black people abound. It's replete. Another book that came out this week, Multiculturalism in Higher Education, Increasing Access and Improving Equity in the 21st Century. This is edited by C. Spencer Platt, Adriel, Hilton, and some others. This volume provides thoughtful discourse on issues ranging from the racial and ethnic diversity of the student and faculty bodies and important topics like disability issues to different educational contexts such as community college, HBCUs, and historically Hispanic institutions. I hope to at some point talk about online black schooling and online black institutions, educational institutions, of which I myself am trying to create. And the last book from this week, from the Journal of Blacks in Higher Education, Solidarity with Other Beings on the Planet. Let me say that again. Solidarity with Other Beings on the Planet, Alice Walker, Ecofeminism and Animals in Literature by Pamela B. Jones. One more time. Solidarity with the Other Beings on the Planet, Alice Walker, Ecofeminism and Animals in Literature by Pamela B. June. For decades, Pulitzer Prize-winning author and activist Alice Walker has spoken out in defense of the oppressed. Her writings address the intersections of racist, sexist, heterosexist, classist, and increasingly speciesist oppressions. And she has made clear the importance of reducing violence and creating peace where possible. In light of Walker's call to action, this book analyzes 7 of her novels to offer a fresh reading situated at the complex intersection of critical race studies and critical animal studies. Interesting. I'm not an animal person, but as a scholar, I'm very much intrigued by this. Because first of all, scholarly appropriation, right? Taking critical race theory, taking black literature, and appropriating it in a scholarly context is usually a good thing, right? That intersectionality created by Kimberly Crenshaw is littered throughout this description, right? Intersectionality is a term created by Kimberly Crenshaw that has gotten a scholarly meaning that has been applied all across the spectrum, and in sometimes ways that she had never even anticipated. Interest convergence theory when it comes to Derek Bell, one of my favorite scholars, or my favorite scholar. And so when it comes to Alice Walker and whatnot, her work's being used to support, let me get this right, speciesist oppression, right, is usually a good thing. Now, on the other hand, but in common cultural society, black folks have a problem with cultural appropriation. And books fit both sides, right? On one hand, books are scholarly. On the other hand, they're cultural. And so to take our culture and try to use our oppression to describe and gain sympathy and gain traction for other subordinated or oppressed people and animals, that's a fine line to dance, right? It's a fine line to dance, especially when we consider that black folks believe that even though we point out the features of our oppression, that it does not get addressed anywhere close to when white women or animal activists or what have you use our story to point out their oppression, right? So it becomes part and parcel of racial subordination when you appropriate the story to then advance programs that benefit still, in fact, white folks. So a very interesting book, Solidarity with Other Beings on the Planet, Alice Walker, Ecofeminism and Animals in Literature. So again, we're gonna. So those are the books that are out there. I just want to finish this off by again referring to Hakim's Bookstores, Survive, Thrive, and Thrive Drive. Go to Hakim's Bookstore. Go to GoFundMe.com. Type in Hakim's Bookstore. You will go to the Hakim's Bookstore page, right, and make your donation. I'm going to create a special video about this, and we're going to come up with different levels of giving and what Hakim's Bookstore, how we're going to reward you for those donations and for those gifts, whether they be free books, whether they be discounts, T-shirts, part of the members of the club, whether we, matter of fact, put a special brick. I'm from university system, so we may put your picture up on the wall as one of our great donors. And the reason why Hakim's still remains one of the oldest, if not the oldest, black bookstore and institution in West Philly, in Philadelphia, on the East Coast, and in the country. So again, Hakim's Bookstore. GoFundMe, check us out, and let me tell you what that $50,000 is going to go to, how we're not just going to survive, but how we're going to thrive. First of all, we're going to update the content. We're going to have what we need at Hakim's is a special section of the store that where we can promote the newest and the freshest authors in the game. From Erica Armstrong Dunbar's Never Caught on the Judge story, Ibram Kendi, Kianga Taylor, Imani Perry, and even our fiction writers, Jasmine Ward, N.K. Jemison. There are people that are large in the game that our children and our folks need to see the moment they step in the door. So one thing that we're going to do to not just survive but also thrive at Hakim's Bookstore is we're going to have a greater display for the freshest and updated content. We're also going to reorganize if you know us, we have plenty of children's books. We have a plethora of the best children's book selection in the city, in the country. For black books that inspire, from Nappy Hair to Hair Love and all that. Patrice McKissick. I can go on and on and on. Kadir Nelson. I can go on and on with the authors, with the illustrators. But what we need to do is organize them by grade level and also bring in Afrocentric books for Afrocentric homeschoolers. We need to be the place that supports African American homeschool parents. We know this epidemic, some of you are doing quite well teaching your children on your own and may seek to do this continually. There's already a movement towards greater homeschooling of our children. And I know that these people need, these wonderful parents need a place to meet. They also need materials. They also need some of the lectures that we can provide. So part of that $50,000, not just to survive, but we're also going to thrive by reorganizing our children's books shelf and section into grade levels and have greater support for homeschool parents. And for those that are just trying to edify, supplement what the public schools are doing. Making it easier for you to choose the right book that's on the age level and grade level for your child. We're also going to incorporate more children's comics, right? Read comic books that are reading, artistry, and whatnot. And you'll be surprised how many black people and people of color are now the center focus of some very popular comic books like Naomi, Moon Girl, and Devil Dinosaur. So I have a buddy, Wolf Warner. Go to YouTube and catch the Wolf Warner report. Go to his YouTube page if you are interested in comic books, and especially comic books regarding people of color. We're going to modernize the traditional Afrocentric content we have here in Hakims. We also have to put on display the Dr. Larry Drews, the Runoko Rashidis, the what's the brother that wrote When We Ruled? Robin Walker from England. These brothers need to be on the 21st century pantheon with the John Henrik Clarks, with the Ivan Van Sertima's, with the Francis Cress Wilsons, right? We have to elevate these scholars, Dr. Asante, and the folks that are carrying it forward, the Afrocentric tradition, and so we need to modernize that content, and also modernize the ancient and classic content. Part of that $50,000 that Hakims Bookstore is asking for to not just survive but to thrive is to get books that are in the public domain, like David Walker's Appeal to the Color Man, Martin Delaney's Blake, The Huts of America, and bring those books to the shelves for your kids to have these. Al-Jahiz's Glory of the Black Race, that was written in 862. Not 1862, 862. Over 1,000 years ago is a book by Al-Jahiz called The Glory of the Black Race. We have to have these books on our shelves. We have to have them for our people. So modernizing the classic and the new Afrocentric content, that is another thing that we're going to do to not just survive, but to thrive. Please go to Hakims Bookstore in GoFundMe. Go to GoFundMe.com. Type in Hakims Bookstore and donate what you can. Again, we'll have another program to discuss the levels of giving. For those that have the resources to give $100, $1,000, or even $10,000, we're going to show that we appreciate it, right? We're not only by creating these programs, but we'll have some special stuff to reward those that reward us. We also have with those donations, with that funding, we will also be able to better support our self-published folks. Black bookstores and black self-published authors have to come together and support each other. I mean, not just the selling, but perhaps we can even be a resource as to producing the book itself. As far as editing, there's lots of marketing and whatnot. There's lots of features to creating a book, and not just writing it, producing it, marketing it, distributing it. And we can create a program that better helps the bookstores and black authors. So we're going to increase our space. We're going to increase our hours of operation. Many of us know that we've only been open Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays. We're going to expand to 7 days a week. Again, that requires a little bit more of a light bill, the security, and all that other stuff. So we're not just going to survive. We're going to thrive. We're going Hakim's second floor. You've never been there, but you will at some day, because we're going to open that up. We're going to clean that up, open it up, and have that space to have events. Right? For those that were there for politicking, for those that want to do homeschool help in the morning, for those that want to do after school help in the afternoon, for those that want to do a chess club, for my brother Vince Williams. We need the Michaud Mission up here on weekend, at nighttime, so we can do the West Philly stroll, watch black movies here at Hakims, and then let's stroll over to 48th Street Grill, or Adiola's, or Veganish, or Booker's, and eat up all the food at the black restaurants, right? That's how we're gonna do West Philly when we come out of this, y'all. SAT prep on the weekends. There's so many things that Hakims and other black bookstores, I don't care if it's Marcus Books, and even Philadelphia, Harriet's, Black and Noble, Uncle Bobby's, right? We're going to get through this, number one, and number two, we're not just going to survive, we're going to thrive, because we're going to have all these programs to make these bookstores the educational lighthouse of each neighborhood. right? Harriet's over there in Frankfurt. Uncle Bobby's up there in Germantown. Black and Noble on Broad Street. And Hakim's here in West Philly. We're going to keep these institutions. They are necessary and needed. So I'm going to stop there. Go to GoFundMe.com. Go to Hakim's Bookstore's page. Donate what you can. And again, we're going to post another video more specifically about what we're going to do with that money and how we're going to reward those that give sizable contributions. If you know Will Smith, if you know Questlove, if you know Dr. J, if you know Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid, if you know Fletcher Cox and the Eagles, the baseball players or what have you, we're going to keep these institutions, and those that have done well and are surviving through this pandemic help us not just survive but also thrive. The Hakim's Bookstore Survive and Thrive Drive. We're kicking that off right now. Thank you for joining us. As always, you know my mantra, we're going to better educate ourselves and our children. We're going to start and patronize black institutions, and we're going to stop unduly criticizing each other and advancing the myth of black inferiority. That's the way we're going to accumulate human, social, political, and financial capital, because that is the revolution that will never be televised. See you guys next week. Hotep.